The wooden cabin door swung open, slamming against the weathered siding as two burly men in suits stepped inside. Their heavy footfalls echoed through the small space, disrupting the tranquil solitude Sarah had grown to cherish. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. The HOA has issued an order for your immediate removal from the premises." Sarah's heart raced, the blood pounding in her ears. She stared at the men, bewildered. What? On what grounds? Failure to comply with community guidelines, unpaid fees, and unauthorized modifications to the property. The taller man's jaw was set, his voice devoid of sympathy. "That's absurd," Sarah protested, her hands trembling. "I own this cabin and the land it sits on. I have the deeds to prove it." The men exchanged a glance, unmoved by her assertion. "We've been instructed to escort you off the property, ma'am. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have no choice but to involve the authorities." Sarah's mind whirred, desperate to find a way out of this nightmare. She couldn't lose her home, her sanctuary, not after everything she'd been through to claim it as her own. Squaring her shoulders, she made a bold decision. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my property, and I have the legal documents to prove it." She strode past the men, retrieving a weathered leather folder from a worn bookshelf. Flipping it open, she thrust the deeds under their noses. The men fell silent, their expressions shifting from confident to uncertain as they examined the documents. Sarah watched their faces, a glimmer of hope igniting within her. "Well, this changes things," the taller man finally conceded, his brow furrowed. The taller man stepped back, his lips pressed into a thin line. "We'll need to verify the authenticity of these documents. In the meantime, you'll need to remain on the premises until further notice." Sarah let out a shaky breath, her grip tightening on the deeds. "Fine, but I want this resolved immediately. I won't be bullied out of my own home." The men exchanged another glance, their expressions betraying their discomfort. "We'll be in touch," the shorter one said gruffly before turning and exiting the cabin, his partner close behind. As the door slammed shut, Sarah sank into a nearby chair, her hands trembling. How had this happened? She had meticulously followed every rule and regulation, paid her HOA fees on time, and kept the cabin in pristine condition. Yet, here she was, facing the threat of eviction from the very place she had come to cherish. Steeling her resolve, she began to make a plan. She would need to gather all her documentation, contact her lawyer, and prepare for a fight. The HOA had no right to take her home away, not when she had the deeds to prove her ownership. As Sarah paced the cabin, her mind racing, a knock at the door startled her. Cautiously, she peered through the window, her eyes widening at the sight of her neighbor, Mrs. Wilkins, standing on the porch. Pulling the door open, Sarah greeted the older woman. "Mrs. Wilkins, what are you doing here?" The neighbor's expression was one of concern. "My dear, I heard about the HOA's attempted eviction. I wanted to make sure you were all right." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. "I'm holding my ground for now, but I'm not sure how long I can keep this up. They're going to verify the deeds, and I don't know what will happen after that." Mrs. Wilkins reached out, squeezing Sarah's hand reassuringly. "Don't you worry, child. I'll be here to support you every step of the way. Together, we'll make sure those HOA bullies don't get their way." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude towards her neighbor. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. I don't know what I'd do without your support." The older woman patted Sarah's hand affectionately. "Nonsense, my dear. We look out for each other in this community. Now let's get to work on your defense." Over the next few hours, the two women pored over the deeds, meticulously examining every detail. Mrs. Wilkins' keen eye for legal documents proved invaluable as they built their case against the HOA's claims. As the sun began to set, a knock at the door interrupted their preparations. Sarah's heart raced as she peered out the window, only to be greeted by the sight of a familiar face. "It's my lawyer, Mr. Simmons," she announced, relief evident in her voice. Pulling the door open, she ushered him inside. "Ms. Langford, I came as soon as I heard about the HOA's attempted eviction." Mr. Simmons' brow was furrowed with concern. "I've already begun reviewing the documentation you provided, and it appears you have a strong case." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "So you think we can fight this?" Mr. Simmons nodded, his expression resolute. "Absolutely. The deeds clearly show that you own the cabin and the surrounding land, including the disputed parking lot. The HOA has no legal ground to stand on." Mrs. Wilkins let out a triumphant chuckle. "I knew those meddlesome HOA members were up to no good. They're not going to bully Sarah out of her home, not if I have anything to say about it." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude towards her neighbors, her faith in the community renewed. "Thank you both for your support. I couldn't do this without you." As the three of them continued to strategize, Sarah knew that the battle with the HOA was far from over. But with her allies by her side, she was determined to fight for the home she had worked so hard to claim as her own. The next morning, Sarah awoke to the sound of raised voices outside her cabin. Peering through the window, she saw a group of HOA members gathered in the parking lot, gesticulating animatedly. Quickly, she slipped on a pair of shoes and stepped outside, eager to confront the situation head-on. As she approached the group, the voices grew louder, and she could make out the words trespassing and legal action. "Excuse me," Sarah called out, her voice firm. "What's going on here?" The group fell silent, and all eyes turned towards her. It was Mrs. Wilkins who spoke up first, her expression resolute. "These HOA members are trying to claim that you're trespassing on their property, dear. They say the parking lot you've been using belongs to the association, not to you." Sarah felt her blood boil. "That's absurd. The deeds clearly show that the parking lot is part of my property. I've been paying taxes on it for years." One of the HOA members, a middle-aged woman with a severe expression, stepped forward. "That may be, but the HOA has maintained and managed that parking lot for decades. It's a community resource, not your personal property." Sarah opened her mouth to retort, but Mr. Simmons' calm voice cut through the tension. "I'm afraid the deeds state otherwise, ma'am. The parking lot is legally part of Ms. Langford's property, and she has every right to use it as she sees fit." The HOA members exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. Sarah felt a surge of triumph, but she knew the battle was far from over. "This isn't over," the severe-looking woman declared, her eyes narrowed. "We'll see you in court." As the HOA members dispersed, Sarah turned to her allies, her expression resolute. "They're not going to give up without a fight, are they?" Mr. Simmons shook his head, his brow furrowed. "No, I'm afraid not. But we're ready for them." The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal activity. Sarah, Mr. Simmons, and Mrs. Wilkins worked tirelessly to prepare their case, gathering evidence and contacting witnesses. The HOA, on the other hand, seemed determined to bury them in a mountain of paperwork and bureaucratic red tape. They filed motion after motion, delaying the proceedings at every turn. Sarah found herself growing increasingly frustrated, her nerves frayed by the constant stress and uncertainty. She had never imagined that owning her own property would be such a battle, and the toll it was taking on her mental and physical well-being was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, as she sat on the porch of her cabin, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Mrs. Wilkins approached with a steaming mug of tea. "Thought you could use a little pick-me-up, dear," the older woman said, her voice gentle. Sarah accepted the mug gratefully, the warmth seeping into her chilled hands. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. I don't know how you do it. You've been so calm and collected throughout this whole ordeal." Mrs. Wilkins chuckled softly. "Oh, believe me, my dear, I'm just as frustrated as you are. But I've learned over the years that keeping a cool head is the best way to handle these sorts of situations." Sarah sighed, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the fire pit. "I just can't help but feel like I'm fighting a losing battle." The HOA has so much power, and they seem determined to wear me down. Now, don't you go giving up on me," Mrs. Wilkins scolded gently. "We've come this far, and we're not about to let those HOA bullies win. You've got the law on your side, and with Mr. Simmons' help, we'll make sure they can't push you out of your own home." Sarah felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her. "You really think we can win this?" Mrs. Wilkins reached out, giving Sarah's hand a reassuring squeeze. "I know we can. We just need to stay strong and keep fighting. This is your home, and you have every right to defend it." As the two women sat in companionable silence, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. With her allies by her side, she was ready to face the HOA head-on, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. Sarah, accompanied by Mr. Simmons and Mrs. Wilkins, entered the courtroom, their expressions resolute. The HOA members, led by the severe-looking woman Sarah had encountered earlier, sat across the aisle, their postures stiff and unyielding. As the proceedings began, Mr. Simmons presented their case with meticulous precision, methodically laying out the evidence and highlighting the legality of Sarah's ownership of the cabin and the surrounding land. The HOA's lawyers, in turn, argued vehemently, claiming that the parking lot was a community resource that had been under the association's management for decades. They accused Sarah of trying to seize control of public amenity for her own personal use. Sarah watched the exchange with bated breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that the judge's decision would have a profound impact on her future, and she couldn't afford to lose. As the arguments grew more heated, the judge held up a hand, silencing the room. "I've heard the evidence presented by both sides, and I must say, this is a rather unusual case." The judge's gaze settled on Sarah, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Langford, you've presented a strong case, and the deeds clearly show that the property in question, including the parking lot, belongs to you. However, the HOA has also made a compelling argument about the long-standing community use of that resource." Sarah felt her heart sink, and she could see the triumphant gleam in the HOA members' eyes. But before she could lose hope, the judge continued, "Therefore, I'm ruling that the parking lot will be considered a shared resource, with Ms. Langford maintaining ownership, but the HOA retaining the right to manage and maintain it, with certain agreed-upon guidelines." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Sarah felt a surge of relief wash over her. She had won, albeit with a compromise, but it was a victory nonetheless. As she exited the courtroom, she turned to Mrs. Wilkins and Mr. Simmons, a grateful smile spreading across her face. "Thank you, both of you, for standing by me. I couldn't have done this without you." In the weeks that followed the court ruling, Sarah worked closely with the HOA to establish the agreed-upon guidelines for the shared use of the parking lot. It was a delicate and often frustrating process, as both sides had to compromise and find common ground. Despite the challenges, Sarah was determined to make it work. She knew that maintaining a good relationship with her neighbors was crucial, and she didn't want to risk further conflict with the HOA. One afternoon, as Sarah was tending to her garden, Mrs. Wilkins approached, a warm smile on her face. "My dear, I must say, you've handled this whole situation with such grace and poise. I'm truly proud of you." Sarah returned the smile, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilkins. I couldn't have done it without your support, and I'm grateful that we were able to come to a compromise with the HOA." Mrs. Wilkins nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, it's always better to find a peaceful resolution if possible. These community disputes can get so ugly, but you've shown that with patience and understanding, common ground can be found." Sarah's gaze drifted towards the parking lot, where a few cars were parked. "I'm just relieved that I get to keep my home. This cabin means everything to me, and I wasn't about to let the HOA take it away." "And you shouldn't have to," Mrs. Wilkins replied firmly. "You're a part of this community, and you deserve to be treated with respect. I'm glad We were able to stand up to those HOA bullies and protect your rights." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude towards her neighbor. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mrs. Wilkins. You've been a true friend through all of this." The older woman reached out, giving Sarah's hand a gentle squeeze. "That's what neighbors are for, my dear. We look out for one another, no matter what." As the two women continued their conversation, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of renewed hope and belonging. With Mrs. Wilkins by her side, she knew she could face any challenge that came her way. In the months that followed, Sarah's relationship with the HOA gradually improved. The agreed-upon guidelines for the shared parking lot worked well, and both sides made an effort to communicate openly and find compromises when necessary. Sarah even found herself attending the occasional HOA meeting, using her voice to advocate for the needs of the community. She was no longer seen as an outsider, but rather as a valued member of the neighborhood. One sunny afternoon, as Sarah sat on her porch, sipping a cup of tea, Mrs. Wilkins approached with a beaming smile. "Sarah, dear, I have the most wonderful news. The HOA has decided to name you the new head of the Community Garden Committee." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "The community garden? But I thought Mrs. Benson had that position." Mrs. Wilkins chuckled. "Well, she's decided to step down, and the association unanimously voted to have you take her place. They were very impressed with how you've handled the parking lot situation and want to see you take on a larger role in the community." Sarah felt a surge of pride and gratitude. "I don't know what to say. This is such an honor." "You deserve it, my dear," Mrs. Wilkins assured her. "You've shown that you're not just a homeowner, but a true member of this community, and I know you'll do a wonderful job with the garden." As Sarah accepted the new position, she couldn't help but reflect on the tumultuous journey that had led her to this point. What had once been a battle for her very home had now become an opportunity to make a positive impact on the place she loved. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah set out to revitalize the community garden, working tirelessly to bring the residents together and foster a spirit of unity and collaboration. And as she looked around at the thriving plants and the smiling faces of her neighbors, she knew that her fight had been worth it. This was her home, and she was determined to make it the best it could be.